Hi, everyone. I'm Bill Squadron, president of Our Energy Policy, and welcome to OEP's Energy Leaders Spotlight Series. We are very pleased today to have joining us Mary Streett from BP. Mary is a senior vice president for U.S. Communications and External Affairs for BP and has been at the company for nearly 10 years. Before that, she was a partner at the law firm of Mayer Brown. She was an official in the Clinton White House, was the deputy general counsel for the Commerce Department. So she has a long and distinguished career in this space, and we're very pleased to have her here today. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Bill. Pleased to be here.
So just to get started, maybe you can tell everyone a little bit about where BP is currently in the transformation from a fossil fuel company historically to really a diversified energy company that's playing such an active role in the clean energy transition.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to talk about that. And BP, we're on a journey, and we talk about transforming while performing, but we are transforming from an international oil company to an integrated energy company. And that really started, I would say, in 2020 with our new CEO, Bernard Looney, when he came in, basically set the ambition for us to be net zero by 2050 or sooner and to help the world get there. And we are in action on that now. So we're not waiting till 2050. We have a lot of interim targets, but we're still very much in the traditional oil and gas business, what I call the energy system of today. But at the same time, we are investing heavily in the transition for the energy system of tomorrow.
And that sort of transitional period, particularly when there's so much history, is often a real challenge. As you look to the future, what do you how would you like to have BP perceived going forward?
Well, when I think of us, I mean, it is, transforming. I mean, BP has been around for over 150 years, and in the U.S. in particular, BP and its heritage companies have been here, and we have every business represented: the traditional oil and gas business, but also a solar business, a wind business, onshore and offshore, biofuels, electric vehicles. So we are really transforming. And I think what's going to be critical as we look at all that the world has to do to make this transformation, companies like BP are going to be critical to that. Not only because we are one of a big emitter today, but because we can do and have done big projects, massive projects. And that's what it's going to take, that know-how to the same know-how that we use to drill oil in deep water all over the world is the kind of know-how that we're bringing to offshore wind and these massive projects in deep water to produce renewable energy. So I think, how do you look back on BP as a company that was able and is able to make the transition?
And as you think about that transition, you have responsibility for external affairs for the company in America, cuts across local, state, federal policy in order to advance the strategy that you were just describing. What kind of approaches to policy do you look toward at those different levels of government?
Well, I think it's a critical right now. I mean, today, the day you and I are talking is the 1-year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act. So policies like the Inflation Reduction Act, other policies in the U.S. at the state level and even the local level are critical to jumpstart any new industry. You need some kind of incentives very often for new industries to get up off the ground. So the Inflation Reduction Act, it focuses across a lot of transition businesses, and those kinds of policies are critical so that they can compete with, I would say, the more traditional energy system of today.
The one area that's gotten a lot of attention recently is this area around renewable natural gas. Mm-hmm. What do you see as the opportunities there as there a particular role that BP is playing in this area?
Well, renewable, yes, there is, and it's something. And one thing I love about working at BP is that I'm always learning as well. So when I joined the company in 2014, we were one kind of company, and now, every day, every year, I'm learning new things. So renewable natural gas comes from things like waste, trash, landfills, farms, manure from all of these things that are emitting methane gas into the atmosphere. So we bought a company last year called OurEnergy, and they basically work with landfills to capture methane gas that would otherwise be going out into the atmosphere, capture that gas, clean it up, and it is then renewable natural gas that can be used the same way as natural gas that you would get out of the ground, the fossil fuel natural gas. But it's taking landfill gas, or also on farms, dairy farms, or manure from cattle, and taking the methane there, capturing it, and selling it. So there's a business opportunity there. At the same time, you have environmental benefits.
And speaking of methane, there's a lot of activity at the EPA around methane, including new regulations, which I understand BP has been generally supportive of. What is the significance and kind of relevance of these new regulations going forward?
Well, methane, the most basic level, and there's probably going to be people watching this that are know a lot more about the science of it, but it's essentially natural gas. And you've got to keep that in the pipes. In terms of climate change and the significance, methane gas can be in some ways more harmful sometimes because of the intensity, the climate intensity. So for methane gas, we need to keep it in the pipes. And so I think we have been very supportive of federal regulation of methane, because we think natural gas is going to be critical to the energy transition as well. And for natural gas to really reach its potential, we've got to keep it in the pipes. And if you keep it in the pipes, you can also sell that gas. So again, like I was talking about with landfill gas, if you keep it in the pipes, you can sell more gas, but it also has a significant environmental benefit.
And those environmental benefits lead to sort of an interesting area because, as you indicated earlier, BP has 150 years of history, mostly as an oil company. As you work really to participate and really lead in this energy transition, when you try to work with clean energy advocates who may, have some hesitation because of the history, how does BP approach building trust and goodwill, building relationships with these new partners?
Sure. Well, it is, I think people have skepticism sometimes. And what I say to our team and potential, partners or folks that we're going to work with is, judge us by our actions, not just our words. So we are working hand in hand. We are advocating with environmental groups and other key stakeholders for methane regulation. We are investing in the energy transition. Just last year, BP invested over half of its global CapEx in the United States in transition businesses. I mentioned OurEnergy. We also closed Travel Centers of America, which is a truck stop all over the United States. People are probably familiar with Travel Centers of America, but once you have that real estate, then you have the ability in all of these transition businesses, whether it's renewable, diesel, electric vehicles, all of these areas, we're able to build that out because now we have this Travel Centers of America. So we're putting our money where our mouth is. In 2019, I think we spent 3% of our global CapEx in transition businesses. Last year, it was 30%. So, we'll continue to work with all interested parties, but we have to build that trust. And I think building the trust involves showing our work sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting point because you have in your sort of broad umbrella of responsibility for communications, but as you say, it's partly communications, but it's partly you know proving it and earning it by the things that you do. So it sounds like that's a big part of building that trust with new partners.
Sure.
Yeah. So, kind of in that same vein, when you look at some of these new projects that you've mentioned and that you're deeply engaged in and embarked on, another big area that has been a major focus is promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, really making it a much more equitable environment for all. How is it that you all address these goals that you're pursuing and also create a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment?
Well, first, Bill, I'd like to, personally, I feel so passionately about this because I think I've benefited as a woman from, DE&I, or diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. And sometimes we have to sort of be set goals for ourselves to make sure we can that we are following those and have some targets. But I think it makes us better. It makes BP better when we can bring in a diversity of points of view and ideas. And oftentimes, and I find this as a woman, even, I have to be careful. I mean, I hire people that we often do. We hire people that are like us, that think like us, and or that even look like us. And so the DE&I agenda, I think, helps us to sort of make sure we are bringing in the best and the brightest from whether it's direct employees or if it's our suppliers. And some of our own DE&I goals have to do with supplier diversity and making sure we are again hiring the best and the brightest, but we have sort of expanded the pool, if you will, of our suppliers to make sure. I think we had something in 2021 like 300 suppliers, a pool of suppliers that were thought of as DE&I suppliers. Now we have over 10,000. So you have to be deliberate in these and looking at, so how do we make sure we're getting the right pool of people, and then you go forward and you pick the best and the brightest.
Yeah, I mean, that point about being deliberate, I mean, to have moved from 300 to 10,000 in just a few years is really
Right.
quite remarkable. Let me ask you a little bit about partnerships, because I think one of the things we all know is that this is such a major undertaking globally that nobody's doing this themselves, and it's really a all hands on deck. Can you talk a little bit about some of the partnerships that BP has started and is now engaged in to help achieve the kind of goals you're describing?
Sure. Well, and this is a massive challenge, the world, the net zero by 2050 or sooner. And so we can't do it alone, and we look for partners. We have a partnership right now with Hertz rental car company, and they have specific EV goals, and we're building a charging business. So working with Hertz, how do we make sure they have for their fleet of rental cars chargers, but then also looking at places where they may have land or access, like airports, where you're going to have a lot of people that need to either charge or that are renting cars, and we can install the chargers, and they have the vehicles, and there's a natural demand. So those are the kind of partnerships that just, I think, make sense. And we're looking at opportunities like that, all over the world, but there's lots of those here in the US. I talked about travel centers and some of the synergies there with, truck stops and others. So we see lots of opportunities with partners and looking for, other corporates that have similar 2050 net zero ambitions, and how can we help them, to decarbonize. And I think that's one of the things that BP, because of our size and our scale, and we can bring that to potential partners. They want to decarbonize, then we have a whole suite of tools to help them do that.
There's it makes me think also about, partnerships both with established companies like Hertz and also with new entrepreneurial ventures, because there's such a real plethora of research, technology innovation that's going on in this space broadly kind of described. When you think about technology and innovation coming, what are the things you're most excited about and think have the most promise?
Well, I think there's not going to be one answer to the energy transition. It's not going to be wind, just solar, just renewable natural gas. It's going to be all of these things, and with there are challenges. I mean, we hear about critical minerals and where do you source those. So we've got to continue as a company, but as the country and the globe, looking at what are all the different possibilities. One area that we're very focused on is hydrogen, and there's green hydrogen and blue hydrogen, but we use hydrogen currently in our refineries that make jet fuel and gasoline for cars, and diesel and biodiesel. So we're currently using hydrogen, but how do we clean that process up so we can reach our own net zero ambition, but also bring down the emissions of the entire industry, or help others do that. Energy intensive industries in particular use hydrogen, like steel manufacturing, cement manufacturing. So if we can help produce a cleaner hydrogen, whether that's a green hydrogen, and we can talk more about that, or blue hydrogen, but then we think we can help not only BP reach its net zero ambitions, but others as well that are trying to decarbonize in steel, cement, and other hard to abate industries. So we think there's a lot of promise with hydrogen. And just for your listeners, they may all know this, but blue hydrogen would be taking natural gas essentially, and then creating a CO2 stream that you then have to sequester. So that's with CCS. So you put that underground, and then you have just a clean hydrogen stream that you use for the manufacturing of either the refining or steel, cement, also potentially vehicles and heavy duty vehicles. So that's the blue hydrogen, and then green hydrogen is from renewable sources. So you take electricity from wind or solar, you put that, and then water, an electrolyzer. And again, this is an area I'm learning about as well. But you have, and then you create what is known as green hydrogen, and then you can also then replace hydrogen in some of these heavy industry uses.
So hydrogen and carbon capture, it sounds like, are two of the areas that your scientists are really focused on as having promise to be major parts of this transition.
That's right, and that's one area we're very focused on, and it's something I mentioned earlier. You asked about policy, that the Inflation Reduction Act and some of the other tax credits that are out there really address, because how do you make green or blue hydrogen competitive with the current hydrogen sources? It does need some government support, at least initially, to make the transition, which is going to be, investing billions of dollars into the transition. But eventually those prices will come down and be competitive with what is known as gray hydrogen or current hydrogen.
We could go on for a long time. Obviously, these topics have such depth. We're very appreciative. Thank you for the insights you're sharing. Is there any further message that you would like to share about BP's plans and the role that the company wants to play on the global stage?
I think it's just, what we started with, Bill. I mean, talking about the energy transition, and it's, investing in the energy system of today, while at the same time, we like to say and, not or. You don't have to say it's one or the other. We can do both, but we've got to continue investing into the energy transition. And I think that is what BP is doing. You can, we are doing that through our actions, not just words. And we look forward to working with all partners. And we're going to need everybody if we're going to reach these net zero goals by 2050 or sooner.
Well, we really appreciate that at OEP. I mean, we've worked closely with BP on an event earlier this year on oil and gas status, and we're working with the company on an event coming up on methane. So it's, as you said, all of the above that's going to be necessary to achieve the kind of goals that are ambitious but necessary, and that we're all committed to doing. So we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And we wish you and the company all kinds of success going forward. And thank you for tuning into the OEP Spotlight series. Thanks.
And thank you, Bill, and thanks for all that you do at OEP.